Welcome. If you're joining us, it's time for The World This Week. The World This Week in partnership with the International Herald Tribune. 7 days, 4 Paris-based correspondents, 1 hour. And with us this week is Shang Jin, journalist for the Xinhua News Agency. Thank you for being with us. Also with us, Billy O'Cadamary of sister station Radio France International. George Kazolius of partner station AITV. And France 24 digital media editor Eric Olander. Welcome to all of you. And thank you for weighing in on the conversation on the World This Week's Facebook page. And you can also follow us throughout the week on Twitter. Our handle is @FrancoisF24. The rest of the world is suddenly paying a lot more attention to what Americans call Beltway politics. Democrats and Republicans have until next Tuesday to strike a deal in Washington to raise the debt ceiling and prevent a possible default on U.S. Treasury bills. Democrats, who control the Senate, want that debt ceiling to go to $2.4 trillion, high enough to avert another vote before next year's presidential election. More than twice what the Republican-controlled House of Representatives wants. But it's proving a particular heavy lift for the Speaker of the House, where Tea Party-inspired conservatives refuse anything that raises a dime in taxes.
There are no gimmicks, there are no smokescreens. It raises the debt limit and cuts government spending by a larger amount than the increase in the debt ceiling.
There are a lot of crises in the world that we can't always predict or avoid. Hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, terrorist attacks. This isn't one of those crises. The power to solve this is in our hands.
George Kazolius, all week long, the rest of the world looking in. Explain it for us. Why is there so much gridlock? Why is it so hard to find a deal?
I think it's really ideological at this stage. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. They voted this spending, so it's not like they're increasing the spending. They're just increasing the ceiling to pay for what they voted to spend. And the Republicans are caught in an ideological noose that they put themselves into and can't get out of. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. They just want to raise taxes on the extremely wealthy or making much more than they were making in 80s, but give the percentage of their taxes on the 80s. They're playing chicken, but with the welfare of the world, because if this default goes through, it's going to hurt people. Interest rates are going to go up. There might be a spark in inflation. That's taxes for everybody, like Obama said. But what about the people in the developing world? They just can't not afford to have prices go up and this sort of economic turmoil again. It will lead to starvation. It will lead to more food riots like we had in 2008. I mean, they're really playing chicken with the world here, and they have to stop. And in this case, I have to support Obama.
All right, and the question you were saying a minute ago, how the Republicans are caught between their right wing and the Democratic position. Conservative Republicans, some say, talking themselves into a corner. Take a look at the mood at a rally Wednesday in Washington.
Senate.
Again, what are we doing today? We're telling them to what?
Folks, we need to remember that every generation of Americans have had to fight for their freedom. Some on the battlefield, some on the street corners, some in the halls of Congress. For us, the fight now is about our debt. That is the threat, not a debt ceiling, but our debt.
Even the lure of free pizza by the House Whip wasn't enough to get conservatives to fall in line behind their leader, leaving the House Speaker, John Boehner, exposed to both criticism and unfortunate puns in the tabloid press, such as this one in the New York Post. Eric Olander, is history repeating itself? John Boehner suffering sort of the same fate as one of his predecessors, Newt Gingrich, did when there was a Democratic president in office back in the mid-90s.
That depends who you are. If you are the Republicans and the conservative wing of the Republican Party, the objective here is Obama. If they lose Boehner along the way, that's okay. But they've been very clear. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, has said the objective here is to make sure that Obama is not in office in 2012. That is what they're going for. This is ideological extremes, but the goal is to make sure that Obama does not get a second term. Boehner may be collateral damage along the way, but that's not important right now.
The one thing I don't understand is big money, banks and insurance companies, hedge funds back the Republicans. And they have nothing to win out of a default? I don't understand.
I don't think that's universal truth. Obama raised $85 million in the first 6 months of this year in his re-election campaign. That didn't all come from grandmothers giving $20 donations. I think that's an old model of thinking that the Republicans are the corporate. Frankly, the Democrats are at the trough just as much as the Republicans are.
But they have no interest in a default, these financiers, these big industrial.
But they don't have the sway right now. Right now, the politics is local, and this is a disconnect that we're seeing, is that national polls are saying we want compromise. But the problem is that congressmen don't respond to national polls. They respond to local polls. And a lot of those local polls are saying hold the line, particularly in red districts in the South and in the Midwest.
And there's a saying, Eric, just for viewers who are not from the United States, that what is it? It takes 500 phone calls or to be able to sway a congressman sometimes from his own district. So it's a case of who shouts the loudest.
And it's what Tip O'Neill said, the former Speaker of the House, that all politics is local. And at the end of the day, these congressmen are responding to their constituencies. And those constituencies, some of them are saying, Michelle Bachmann is the best example there. Michelle Bachmann has a constituency that is saying, give them hell. And that's what she's doing.
The Republican candidate for president.
Can you paint for us then the worst case scenario come Tuesday then if they don't reach an agreement?
Here's the problem. We don't know. We thought by now we would be in some sort of third degree of hell in terms of the economic crisis. We don't know. The treasury markets have not responded the way that people anticipated. So we are in uncharted territory right now. And frankly, that is very disconcerting. What's interesting is the Chinese have been coming in with a number of warnings, because remember, the Chinese own $1 trillion of American debt, and saying, be very, very careful what you're about to do. But at the end of the day, that's not actually carrying a lot of weight in Washington. What's carrying weight in Washington is the woman you're seeing on the screen right here is Michelle Bachmann and the Tea Party.
You mentioned how the Chinese own debt, and when you look at a graph published on the New York Times website, China owns, it says, 8% of that debt. And as one of our regular Friday guests, Judah Grunstein, says, if I owe you $1, I have a problem. If I owe you $1 million, you have a problem.
Yeah. If the debt percentage climbing to that high, I think it feels like the United States has made China as a hostage, because if the default really happened in the United States, maybe it's just a political issue, but for China it's a big economic disaster.
Right now, are people questioning the fact that there was the purchase of so many treasury bills over the years?
No, not right now, but I think some experts, because I'm not an expert or professional economics journalist, but instinctively I know the warning has repeated a lot among the the economic field, among the experts in China, and there are many warnings, serious warnings to Chinese government about the U.S. debt. So we also noticed that the Chinese government has increased their investment in euro. That can be a shift, but I don't know how much the shift can positively affect the future.
Well, you're caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, if they raise the debt ceiling, that means they have to produce more money, which is going to bring down the value of the dollar, bring down the value of your holdings. You're going to have to buy more bonds to make sure that what you've got retains some value.
What was interesting was the Xinhua, your news agency, Xinhua news agency, publishing an opinion piece where it said it's arguably true that the ongoing tug of war in Washington is Uncle Sam's own business, as the United States has not yet defaulted on its debt. However, the ugliest part of the saga is that the well-being of many other countries is also in the impact zone when the donkey and the elephant fight, the donkey being the Democrats, the elephant being the Republicans. Eric Ellen, has been huge reaction to this editorial.
There's been tremendous reaction to that editorial, but that does not factor into the debate. And this is very hard for people here in Europe and in China to understand that the debate in Washington does not include an international response to it. The Democrats have been trying to get that message in, but it just is really, when you look at the dialogue that's going on and the narratives that are going on, it is not about the consequences that are felt in the developing world or in China. This is about elections that are happening in the United States, and that's a very important part of this story to figure out. At the end of the day, the consequences of this are going to be felt far and wide, but that isn't part of what the discussion is.
All right, we're going to move on. We're going to move from Washington a bit north to New York City. I've cried every day, the words of Nafisat Dio in a thank you speech that she gave to women's and African community groups at a Christian center in Brooklyn on Thursday. That caps a week that saw the 32-year-old hotel maid shed her anonymity in spectacular fashion. In the U.S., most sex crimes victims, their names are withheld in the press. And Diallo, after being in protective custody, coming out at the beginning of the week, granting a cover story interview to Newsweek magazine and a long interview to ABC television.
I'm so sorry. I turned my head. He came to me and grabbed my breast. No, you don't have to be sorry. I was like, stop this. But he won't say nothing. He keep pushing me to the hallway, back to the hallway, keep pushing me. I was so afraid.
Billy O'Cadamari, throughout the week, people have commented on this interview. There's a longer extract of it in ABC's Nightline program. And the question is, how much was she prepped? How much of it is dramatic? Newsweek's Christopher Dickey told us that on the what happened, he found her story sincere. Does some of it get lost in translation? The fact that when you come from West Africa, you don't tell a story the way you would if you come from the West.
Exactly. She has tried a clever public relations exercise here, which I don't think, I don't see the value of it at this stage until we wait a few days and see what it does, because she is seen as, in Africa, the victim up against this super powerful personality from the West, from France, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, and the moment it became clear that there were some gaps in the way this investigation was carried, and that there could be a problem with prosecuting the case, then it started creating a credibility problem for us. So she had to come out here, and the way she's done it is the way they could only do it in the West. This is very difficult, and I'm not so sure that, the interview as it is going to win her as more sympathizers as it would win her, people would ridicule the way she has presented a case so far.
And those media appearances earning her a 7-hour audition at the with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. They're not pleased about this. But George Kazolis, we're no closer to finding out what happened in that room at the Sofitel.
I don't think so. But we do know some things. We do know that she's not credible. We do know that she had several bank accounts in several states through which a lot of money went through that she did not earn. We know that she called this guy in prison in Arizona. We know that she lied on her, the allegations are she lied on her immigrant visa. The point is she's not going to be credible in front of a jury. She's not. And we still don't know you're right, we don't know what happened inside that bedroom. But obviously Cyrus Vance doesn't want to go to
the Manhattan DA.
Yeah, he doesn't want to go into a case that he's going to lose. It won't look good for him, and he's very upset with, and he's probably even more upset now that she's trying to put public opinion pressure on him to follow through with a case that maybe he doesn't really want to pursue.
And that's what's going on here. There's a political process that her attorneys are taking here. What she's trying to do is to mobilize both the immigrant and the African American community to turn this from a rape case into a civil rights case. And you can see the lining up and the fear for Cyrus Vance. And remember, in the United States, district attorneys are elected. So this is a political process. It's not a judicial process right now. It is a political process. And Cyrus Vance's worst nightmare is if Jesse Jackson, the famed civil rights leader, or any of these civil rights leaders start showing up and mobilizing the New York African American community to say this is about justice and civil rights, not about this. Now, to this issue that we heard today, and this is one of the big themes online all week about her credibility. And this is really a tragedy of this case, is that people are bringing up her credibility as she's lied about her immigration status, she lied about money. That has nothing to do with the allegations that she was sexually violated.
But it has everything to do with the jury.
It
has
does,
everything
but
to do with
we
how you
have
come
to
across in
separate
front
the
of a
two,
jury.
though, and that's a very important factor in all this. And when we start melding them together, we're part of the problem.
Yes, Eric is right on this, but also, I mean, she is already jumping the gun, as it was, saying that, even if the district attorney does not go ahead with prosecution of the case, then she will file a civil case. And in the eyes of many, she's already looking at money, she's looking at the influence of the person involved, and she's looking at her own future
And coming out is a very unusual step here in France. Nafisat Dio, since the month of May, already a household name. Some in the U.S. only discovering her name this week when she granted those interviews. And now in the U.S., some are wondering about the anonymity rule for sex crimes victims. Clyde Haberman in the New York Times saying its defenders say it's difficult enough to get rape victims to come forward. The prospect of having their names revealed may make them more hesitant than ever. But another argument is that the time has passed for rape victims to be stigmatized in this manner. Let me ask you, Shang-Jin, where do you stand on this? Should the press give the name of an alleged sex crimes victim, or should her name have stayed anonymous as long as she wanted to stay out of the limelight?
I think first of all, from a female point of view, I'd rather to believe the victim is a victim. What she said is truth, because the problem of her credibility in her story has nothing to do with this case. I agree with Eric, and the other thing is she has she told lies in the past. Doesn't mean she can't be a victim in a rape attempt assault. So returning to your question, I prefer the lawmakers to respect the victims' own
anonymity if they so choose.
Yeah.
It's a big difference between Europe or France and the United States, which we don't do that in the United States.
And before we go, just this comment from the France 24 World This Week Facebook page. Daniel from Israel says, she has no reason to hide, to feel ashamed. He should be hiding and burying himself somewhere else. Her act is bound to empower many other women. When we come back, we'll look at the lessons from the tragedy in Norway 1 week on. You're watching The World This Week.